So you clicked on this video and you know that there's a serious problem at hand. And you're one of those guys who's been trying to get married for 2, 3, 4 years, and you're just running into this like roadblock of why can't I make this happen? Like what's actually going on? And before we go into anything, like I have been in your shoes. I was 210 pounds, I was 30% body fat. I had basically no confidence in terms of my ability to actually be a attractive candidate or someone who would be, someone who would be well pursued, or however you want to call it. I had zero confidence in that area. And just as a disclaimer, because I know someone's going to be in the someone's going to be in the comments like, hey, are you married? Like, what's going on? So I'm on that path. And one thing, I'll get into this in more detail, but right now I have basically zero anxiety around this entire process. Yes, there are other things that do need to be taken into consideration when you're at that stage where you can actually consider this and your physique, your body is not holding you back, but that's an entirely different video. What I want to do in this video is actually break down how we even got here in the first place. Because for a lot of you guys, when you're actually considering this, you were sold this story. You were told that there was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow as you were going about you're going about your life, and you've gotten there, and you're like, okay, like, but I thought this was all going to work out. Like I was going to have this beautiful wife, and everything was going to be, magical and wonderful, and I would be so fulfilled and happy, right? Well, if you were to consider your journey in terms of how things have been so far and what brought you to this exact point, you're probably one of those guys who, did well in school. You were very, academically focused. Your parents pushed you towards like, okay, get like a really good job, become a doctor, become an engineer, like go do all these like, standard cultural careers. And you did that, and you pursued that very well, and you were very diligent about that entire process. And you went through your training, you did whatever you had to do. You even got masters. You went into that entire process because, one, you were actually, passionate about that, but you also had this in the back of your mind, like, okay, this will make me a very desirable candidate when I'm done with this entire process. And let's not kid ourselves. I mean, as guys, we have that desire there. It's not something that, we should shy away from, or like be like, oh no, I was actually doing it just because I love engineering so much. Maybe you do, maybe you do. But if we're being very honest, that is a huge component of it, because we know when we achieve certain milestones in life, that makes us more desirable. It's just a simple fact of life. And just because of the nature of the training, of the work hours, of everything that goes along with this, there had to be certain sacrifices that were made with your health specifically. And that, includes late nights studying, a lot of hours, chronic stress, just a lot on your plate, unhealthy food choices because you just don't have the time to cook, or you're just not in a position to be able to have good, healthy meals, or you don't even know what that looks like in the first place. You think you have to go into like a broccoli and rice kind of scenario to even be in good shape. So there's like all these mental blocks around what actually goes into being healthy and doing this entire process. It's gone a little bit better now, but it's still bad enough that I'm even making this video in the first place. So hope that's clear in terms of what has actually brought you to this point where you're maybe 28 or above. And if you were to do a body fat analysis, you would be anywhere north of 20, even 25%. And this is frustrating because you thought that when you were done with this, when you were done with your training, when you were in a good position with work, that everything would work out. And to be very clear, some people will actually, they'll be fine with you being whatever weight, because for them all that matters is like, okay, he's financially stable, he's good, he has good enough character, he's not someone who's going to be troubling our daughter or whatever, so it's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter. But if you're watching this, that's not who you want to be. You want to be excelling in all areas. You've clicked on this video because you know that there's a problem, and you would not want to be one of those guys who just happens to have good credentials, happens to have a good career, happens to have like all these things in place, and you don't feel secure in terms of how your body looks and what's actually going to be attractive to your future wife. So Hope that's clear. You're here for a reason because you know that there's more that you can achieve. And in terms of what actually goes on with the entire process, if you were to talk about the marriage apps, like you talk about the wish, the WhatsApp wish, the groups, even in person, it's just like, and I see this because this is something that's that's coming up in my circle. Guys get rejected purely off of looks. And you may say that's unfair. They should look at my career, my character, my all these different things. I'm a wonderful person. If they just knew who I was, like they would give me a second chance. Guys, you have to understand that women, they want to be physically attracted to their partner too. They want a physically attractive man that they are married to. I don't see that being a problem. I don't see why that's like something that's so controversial and we should be ignoring this fact of life. It is a fact of life. So the sooner you accept the sooner you accept that this is actually a true reality that you're facing, and this is something that you need to tackle, the sooner you can actually make some progress. Because the more you deny this, and the more you live in this la la land of like, oh no, you should, but and this other thing that happens is that because you're lacking in this department, you start having an over reliance on your credentials, material success, the car you have, the lifestyle you can provide. And it becomes this thing of like you're trying to put on a show to actually convince someone to actually take you seriously. When if you were stripped of all of those things, if you didn't have the career, if you didn't have the car, if you didn't have these material things that you're placing so much reliance on, it would be you would get no looks, you'd get no attention whatsoever, and you would just be seen as like, okay, he doesn't have anything, so like, I mean, why should we take him seriously? So understand that there is a real problem here, and the more you're in denial, the more you're like, oh, this is not a big thing, I can just like coast my way through, I can find a way, I can develop a charming personality and be funny. Those things are important. Those things are very important. And I would also argue, because I understand what this is all like, that some guys get away with that. They get away with having a charming personality. They're funny. They're easy to relate to, and they just make someone, make a girl feel very safe and very in her feminine, all that kind of thing, right? But that's despite the fact, like they don't, for them, for those like funny chubby guys, it's almost like they don't even consider their weight a problem. So it's not on their radar in the first place. And it works out, I guess. I mean, you just have those kind of scenarios. So I don't want you to think that, oh, this is a problem for everyone. This is a problem for those of us who are actually aware of this, and this is becoming a continuous issue where every time you try to go about this process, you're just held back and you're getting the feedback from the market, so to speak. I mean, hate to use that language, but you're getting the feedback of like, okay, your body is something that's really getting in the way and something that's actually hindering your process, your entire success with this, right? So, and again, I said that I have been in your shoes. I was 210 pounds. I was 32% body fat. I was not happy with the way I looked, not happy with how everything was going. And this was only 3 to 4 years ago. And the reason it took me long to actually get to this point is because I didn't have an actual system that I could actually follow. There was all these blocks I had in terms of what actually goes into this entire process of actually creating a better physique or having more confidence around who you are. So it took me a long time, but I mean, I can confidently say now, like I said in the beginning of the video, this is something that I have zero anxiety around. I know that when the right person actually enters my life, this will be something that's not even on my consciousness because I've already taken care of this. And in fact, it becomes an asset because the way I conduct myself and the way I actually go about my day and the way I have this ambition, the way I have all the daily habits set up the right way, this all creates that aura of like, okay, this guy is like actually high value. Because we throw these terms around of like, oh, high value, ambitious, 1%. At the end of the day, guys, it's really just about, are you a man of your word and are you actually working towards bettering yourself every single day? That's all it comes down, all it comes down to. It's not something complicated. There's no checklist that you need to follow, and once you hit all the check boxes, because you've been in this mindset of like, oh, I hit this checkbox, I had A, B, C, D, and then my beautiful wife will be waiting at the end of it. That's clearly not worked out, right? So you need to understand that everything needs to come together And there's a certain kind of man that develops when you're actually taking care of your physique. And this is something that I walk all my clients through. All my sacred athlete and all my sacred elite clients, this is the entire process that I walk them through, because I understand that what actually creates that man who is undeniable when it comes to this simple fact of like, okay, trying to get married. It's, you become undeniable when you actually have everything in place. And before I go into what that process actually looks like and what the roadmap actually is towards getting to that destination, you have to understand why everything you've been doing up until this certain point, with your lifestyle, with your habits, how how did you even get here in the first place, right? You have to understand that someone being overweight and a Muslim man being overweight is not something that just happens. There is no precursor to it. There is no cause to it. There's absolutely so many reasons why that happens in the first place. A big one just being the fact that our society today is engineered to create soft men. It's just a fact of life. You just have to look in the media, you have to look on social media, you have to look in terms of what's actually being created in terms of the narrative, in terms of what men should be like, or what actually goes into the entire process. It's engineered to create soft men. Like physically soft. I mean, that's the first sign of like how this even manifests in the first place. The second is understanding that there is, when I work with a lot of my clients, there's a lot of cultural baggage and a lot of like familial baggage that comes along with this entire process. Because for a lot of us, if you're South Asian, if you're Arab, if you're whatever ethnicity, Muslim ethnicity you wanna talk about, there's this idea, again, referring back to what I said in the beginning of the video, where there's this over-reliance on credentials, on achievements, on milestones, on degrees, on titles. So no one actually in your inner circle, your immediate social circle, is actually someone who's the entire package. You have the overweight uncles who, they never got in shape, they never had that opportunity, or they never took it seriously, so they're the ones with like, the uncle bod. And subconsciously, even though when you were in your 20s, you were like, oh, I don't want to become anything like that. I'm going to be jacked, I'm going to be lean, I'm going to have all this stuff, and I'm going to be like so attractive, right? But subconsciously, because you've never seen an actual model of what that actually looks like, you fell into that same pattern. So that's also a big part of this. And the third aspect of what actually creates this is just pure lifestyle. It's just your lifestyle is bad. It doesn't serve you in any way. Because what actually creates that weight that you've put on up until this point is that late night eating. It's not getting enough sleep. It's not exercise. It's not making time for it. Having all these excuses like, oh, I don't have time for the gym, which is like the layman's excuse I've ever heard. Because if this is something that's serious to someone and they actually want to take care of this becomes a priority. But that's an entirely different video. So there's all these different things that go into it, and then you pair that with staying up until 2 a.m., doom scrolling, watching things you're not supposed to, doing things you're not supposed to, exposing yourself to things. I don't want to spell it out, but there's like so many things that you're exposing yourself to that's even eroding the spiritual barakah that actually comes into marriage. And on that point, there's actually a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says that a believer is deprived of some of his risk because of some sin that he's doing. I'm paraphrasing the verbiage. And that's very true. When you're misaligned in private in terms of what you're eating, what your mindset is like, how you approach life, how you approach this entire process of getting married, that will manifest in your public life. As much as you want to try and hide it, and as much you want to be like, oh, like what happens after 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. is, is just like something I'm doing. It's not hurting anyone. That's not how the world works. And if you're as a Muslim, you have to understand that there are spiritual implications to everything that you do, good or bad. If we do good in private and we're actually working to better ourselves for ourselves, but also in terms of our relationship with Allah, that will come out. People will be able to sense like, okay, there's something different about this guy because I can just tell like he's aligned and there's something that he's working towards on himself. He may not be the perfect, end product, but he actually has something going on for himself. And that comes through. It's hard to hide that. Same goes for when you're misaligned and when you're doing things that you're not supposed to be doing. That does show. Physically, there's the exhaustion, there's the brain fog, there's like you're not like as present as you should be, and there's all these like symptoms that come up. So you have to understand that as Muslims, this becomes more critical because there's a spiritual implication, there's a spiritual consequences when it comes to this entire thing, right? So now that we understand what has actually created this, your lifestyle, what problems you're running into, and how you cannot afford to be having these same problems. Because I see so many great Muslim men, they have great characters. They're in the masjid, they're attending halakas, they're so pleasant to speak to, and some of them are even like students of knowledge, and they're pursuing Islamic sciences, and they're doing so well for themselves, and they have so many wonderful qualities. But it's just like if you just elevated yourself, you became a 2.0 version of yourself, you wouldn't be single at 32 or 35 or whatever your age is. It doesn't really matter, because this, at some point, it becomes age irrelevant, because the symptom, whether this is 22 or 32, the issue is still the same. Your physique, your body, in terms of what you're doing to actually cultivate that, is actually holding you back. And like I said in the beginning of the video, it's a visceral thing that people judge you on, especially women. They're, especially with social media, they have access to, in terms of like seeing like, oh, what are attractive they see men, Muslim men, they're supposed to look like. So it's not like you can be like, oh, just take me for who I am. They have a certain expectation. Some will be more measured about it, some will not. That's not something you can control. You can only control in terms of how you actually elevate yourself. So we know what the problem is now. You know what the problem is, and you know that you cannot afford to suffer anymore, because this is excruciating. We're supposed to get married, guys. This is supposed to be something that's actually engineered into us, and this is something that's, when pursued with the right intentions, actually beloved to Allah, and is in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he got married. And this is something that he encouraged all of his Sahaba to do, because it fulfills a natural need, and it propagates society, and there's like so many benefits that come to it, that come to a man just psychologically, and there's like so much fulfillment, on and on and on. We can go into the benefits of all of this, but I hope you understand that there's a real dire need for you to solve this ASAP, as soon as you possibly can, because you cannot afford to be in this position, because you know better than anyone that if you solve this, if you were 40 pounds lighter, 60 pounds lighter, you had a good solid frame on yourself, this would become a non-issue whatsoever, right? So how do I actually do this? What's the actual process? So you've told me what the problem is, Farhan. What do I actually do? What do I actually do about this? Where do we go from here? So how I work with all my clients to create that physique, to create that man who is undeniable, who is able to pursue whatever he wants because he is so confident in his ability, is going through the Sacred Ali system. And I won't go through the entire process in excruciating detail, because I mean that's something that's reserved for my private clients, obviously. But there is a certain path, and I'll walk you through it. And as I'm going through it, it'll make sense very, very clear in terms of why you need to go about this exact way. So the first thing that I do with all my clients, is what I call the Allah-centric identity reset. This is essentially, before we touch any macros, before we touch any training, before we do any workouts, I want to make sure that they're approaching this with the right mindset. This is all predicated, this is all coming from a Hadith Qudsi, where the Prophet says that Allah says, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allah says, I am of the opinion of my servant. So I am as my servant thinks of me. It's obviously part of a longer narration, but that's the beginning of it. I am as my servant thinks of me. And this manifests in all kinds of different ways. So when I work with all my clients, especially my one-on-one clients, I walk them through, okay, what are the roadblocks that you think that you're facing right now, inside in terms of what we need to do with your physical transformation, but also outside in terms of your other issues with marriage, with work, whatever you have going on. What do you think, what do you say to yourself when things are not going your way? What are some of the things that are actually impacting you? And a big one, I mean, just as a simple example, is like, I don't have time to work out. So I ask them, okay, what does that say about your belief about Allah? It says some way, shape or form, it says that Allah has not given me enough time in my day to actually pursue this seriously, to actually have the time to work out. Then I asked them, okay, is that true? It's obviously not, but can you find any evidence where what you're saying and what you're believing by Allah is actually false? I mean, you can look at, well, other people are able to do it. There's actually Muslims who are actually pursuing this. So that's one very clear example. Other people are doing it, so I can do it too. But also understanding that Allah Himself has said that He will not change the condition of people until they change what's with themselves or with their own, in terms of what they're doing, in terms of their mindset, their beliefs. So they understand that, okay, I mean, Allah is not punishing me by decreasing the amount of hours I have in my days because I don't have barakahs, because I don't have time, time scheduled for this. I'm not actually seeing this as something I need to take very seriously. So we dismantle that very quickly. And we instead reframe it in terms of how we can actually, emphasize this and repeat this in a daily process where you're repeating to yourself, like, no, Allah's given me barakah in my time. I have so much time that if I use the right way, then I'll actually be able to get my workouts in. Yeah, in terms of it just goes on. In terms of whatever we have, we break this down to the T, and we make this a core component, a daily habit, essentially, where you repeat this to yourself, and you understand that nothing's really holding me back. Like, Allah's given me absolutely everything that I need to succeed, and it's just entirely my responsibility to actually take care of this. So that's the first step. The second step is what I call the high performance Muslim physique roadmap. This is essentially taking you from where you are and taking you through a predictable, repeatable system, no matter what your starting point is or what your actual, stats are, so to speak. What this does is it creates a predictable, sustainable process that you can follow, and there's no ambiguity in terms of what you need to be doing. Because when a lot of guys, they understand that, okay, this is a problem, I'm not getting married because I'm being judged on my looks, and this is something I'm insecure about, they go into what I call the desperate man trap. And they're supposed to be just executing on a very sustainable process, but they just go overboard, and they're like cutting carbs out, they're cutting their calories by 1,000. On day one, they're doing 2 hours of cardio every single day, and it works for like 2 weeks, and then they crash because they had a bad day of work and they binge ate. So understand that there's an actual process that once you understand it and once you're actually implementing it, it will get you to your goal. It won't be dramatic. It won't be like, fireworks are going off because I'm losing 5 pounds a week. It won't be anything like that, but you'll save so much time, mental effort, just headache. You won't have this headache because you'll know that there's an entire process you're following. Essentially breaks down to 3 to 4 phases depending on where what you actually need. But there's a very, very repeatable system. I take all my clients through it because it makes the process so simple. There's obviously a cutting phase, there's a reverse diet phase, there's a lean bulk phase. Essentially, that's what it boils down to. The duration of every one of those varies, but that's exactly the process that I take all them through. And it makes everything so much easier. The next thing is actually having your training and your nutrition dialed the exact way you want it to be. Because understand, when you're in this scenario where you're having trouble getting married, you have to understand that training and nutrition are a huge, huge part of this. Because the man who's not training, who's just sitting around, who makes excuses, who doesn't want to show up for himself, who doesn't want to do cardio, who has all these like limiting beliefs and just wants to eat whatever he wants because he's tired, he had a long day at work, he wants to stress eat, that's contributing to the problem. And if you don't have a methodical, you don't have a dialed in process in terms of what your training and nutrition actually looks like, and it's actually culturally aligned, it's based on numbers, it's based on raw data that we actually get from your height, your weight, everything like that, you're not going to be doing this the right way. Because again, you'll fall into this desperate trap where you're like just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping something works, and you drop like 25 pounds in 3 weeks. That's not how this works, guys. There is an exact process that I take every single one of my clients through. There's an aesthetics training protocol where we focus on what actually goes into an attractive physique. There's the shoulders, chest, arms, whatever their lagging muscle groups are. We focus on that. We make sure those are priority. We make sure your nutrition is dialed so that as you're going about losing the weight, you're not running into this issue where you're not having enough energy for work, you're not getting enough protein, you're not able to eat out with family every now and then. So it's very, very methodical in this entire process that I have created for all my clients, and I walk them through every step of the way because this is critical. Once you know this, it becomes so much easier to actually implement all of this. The next thing is understanding the supplements that you need to be taking. This is one of those things where I see an over-reliance on supplements simply because, again, it goes back to this desperate trap where like, okay, there's this like peptides. I need to get into peptides because that'll help me like lose weight, and GLPs and guys, there is no shortcut. Supplements they supplement. It's very simple, and I keep it very simple for all my clients too, because it's just you want to be going about this like very simple way, and what you need is all what you truly need in terms of covering a deficit or covering something that you just don't have access to right now from your diet. We just supplement it. And then, not to make this too long, but having a deep recovery protocol in place, because again, what's actually contributing to your problem not being married is your late night habits. I say this to pretty much all my clients, and I make this rule for myself, that nothing good happens after 9 p.m. Unless you're working a night shift, unless you're a physician who is on service, or unless you're blue collar for whatever, and you have to stay up for whatever reason, nothing good happens after 9 p.m. And the sooner you're actually able to accept that, the sooner you accept that, okay, my sleep is actually of paramount importance when it comes to this entire process, the sooner I'll look healthier, the sooner I'll have more clarity, the sooner I'll have less brain fog, the sooner I'll be less inclined to do things at night which are not serving me, which are severing that connection I have with Allah in terms of sins or bad habits, the sooner your life will improve. So we make this a core pillar in terms of how I coach all my clients in terms of what their protocol individualized to them actually needs to look like. Then comes the daily spiritual alignment. And this is something that I've created for my clients. I've done this for myself because I understand that for Muslims, it's not just about the physical, lose weight, macros, protein, training. It's not just about that. We want to be improving as Muslims as well. So I make sure that they're hitting the salah, obviously, but we have other metrics that they're also hitting: Quran, zikr, a core focus on salawat, especially on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because that is the bedrock in terms of if you want to follow someone when it comes to physical excellence, there should be none other than the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you're actually following. So there's an entire, you can think of it as habits, KPIs, whatever, that need to be hitting every single day. And it just reinforces the identity of this is who I'm becoming. I'm becoming a strong Muslim man. And the way you do that is you look at the evidence of like, okay, I'm actually doing these things I'm supposed to be doing as a Muslim, and I'm taking care of my health. So it just creates this harmony. It creates this feeling of like, okay, I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm aligned on all of this. Last step is setting up the sacred standard. And this is where we harmonize everything into a daily schedule, a weekly schedule even, where everything has its place. Nothing is random. Nothing is something that's haphazard or we're just throwing it in and hoping you actually get it done. This is actually something that we implement, and we make sure that everything is in place and you're actually following this. At the end of this, when you start implementing all this, you develop so much confidence and you develop so much just conviction in terms of who you are that you just fall in love with the process. And when you're so involved with bettering yourself and improving your physique and improving your health, biomarkers, your labs, whatever, when you fall in love with that, guys, it becomes so attractive to women because they see a man on a mission. Right now, what's actually happened is that you're not on any mission. You've achieved certain milestones and you're looking around like, okay, like this was supposed to get me something, but I'm not, I'm just like, I'm doing the same things every single day. I'm going to work, I'm coming home, I'm watching shows, I'm on fantasy football, I'm playing video games with my boys, then going to sleep at 2 a.m. He's just on the same cycle over and over and over again. There's no mission, there's no overarching thing that you're actually working on that's actually giving you meaning beyond your daily routine. When you actually do this, you become so internally aligned with this is who I'm supposed to be, that you're always on a mission. Because this process never really ends, because once you actually lose 30, 40 pounds or get to 10% body fat or whatever your end goal is, you know you only climbed one mountain. There's always something else you can be working on. Maybe you take up a sport, maybe you take up martial arts, maybe you go even further with your physical training. You want to go to 8%, you want to do all these different things, right? It's never ending. And this is not one of those things where it's a bodybuilder mindset. This is something that also trips up a lot of guys, where they're like, oh, I have to live like a bodybuilder, I have to pack my lunches and have like chicken and rice and broccoli and just like protein shakes and all this. Guys, that's not ideal in the first place. And it's actually a symptom of being being your entire personality. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to turn you into a gym rat or a gym bro. That's not the process or the mindset behind this. This is creating this physically and spiritually aligned man who's able to pursue marriage from a place of power, from a place of I'm so sure of myself and I've created the physical evidence that this is not something that's going to be weighing down on me. Like physically, obviously, but also just mentally. This is not something that's actually on my mind. So, guys, there is an entire world of possibilities of self-confidence, of self-belief, of just having this positive mindset, of having an abundance mindset that comes from taking care of your health and your fitness. This is not something you can afford to just like, oh, I'll think about it, whenever. You're already suffering the consequences of this. This is not something that I need to I should be convincing you of. You know that this is a problem already. And the more you delay this, the more you make this like something that you want to put your blinders on and it's just like, oh, I don't need to worry about this, the more you're going to be in the same trap. And like I said, guys, this is not about hitting a certain age and being like, oh, I'm 30, so I need to focus on this now. This could be for someone who's 20 or someone who's 24. If you've let yourself go physically, that's the right time to fix it. It's not when things get bad enough or they get too bad. They're bad enough already if you're already suffering the consequences and you're not able to pursue marriage from where you want to be pursuing it. And you don't want to be relying too much on your credentials or what you bring to the table materially. Because let's face it, that works for some. I'm not saying it doesn't create even, good marriages, but you want more than that. And it is possible. I've done it for myself. Like I said, I was 210 pounds, 32% body fat. I've done it. I helped my clients do it. I laid out the entire roadmap in terms of what that looks like. If you want to explore that, go to my description, apply, and then inshallah we'll see if you're fit for the program. But guys, this is exactly it. You have everything that you need. You know that this is possible. You know that it's all about taking the first step. Inshallah, have that tawakkul on Allah, that once you actually take the first step, once you actually start building this man that you know you're supposed to become, you're supposed to be, everything will start working out for you. And this problem that you have of like, oh, like I'm overweight and I don't look good in clothes and all these different things, they'll go away, inshallah. And I say this out of love. I say all this, like I didn't have to record this, video if I didn't care about you, if I didn't care about all the Muslim men who are suffering from this, when they don't have to, when they take the first step, they place their trust in Allah, they follow a proven, systematical process, and they actually get the results they want. Everything changes. So inshallah, guys, that's the video. Inshallah, I'll catch you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum.